It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
It's not quite Alex Jones this Friday. I am your guest host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I'd like to thank Alex for having me on as his guest host today. It's my pleasure. I drove down here to Austin from Oklahoma City yesterday in order to host the show. It's been a while. It's been several months since I first had the opportunity to guest host the Alex Jones show, and it's always a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to a good time today. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about Benghazi. That is in the news, and what they're talking about in the mainstream media is not exactly what occurred at Benghazi, what we need to be talking about regarding Benghazi. So we'll be talking about that a lot, and we'll also be taking your calls. I believe Friday is First Time Friday or First Caller Friday, so we'll be taking your calls later. I'm really looking forward to engaging Alex's audience one-on-one and seeing what they think about my performance here. Anyways, of course, my name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I have been on this show a couple of times, a number of times over the past couple of years, mainly, of course, regards to the work I've done on A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. That documentary is, of course, available in the info shop, and it's the expose of the Oklahoma City bombing. A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995 is the correct title. And we spent a number of years compiling that information, and in doing so, developed our own little viewpoint on false flag attacks, and talking to people on the inside, as I have in my associates in research and writing. We have talked to some of the main players involved in these operations, and we've come to a realization of how these operations are executed on the ground. So using that lens, I'll be applying it to current events and what may have happened or not in Benghazi, and of course with the Boston bombing, of which InfoWars has been on the tip of the spear, literally breaking that story wide open. Something Alex and I have been talking about for a while now is the evolving curve of the information war. Not only are we unraveling these attacks immediately after they occur, we are unraveling them as the official script is being laid out. We are now actually dictating terms to the elite regarding the narrative they want to give to the American people. That was a battle, what happened after the Boston bombing, an info battle, and guess who won? We did, the truth seekers, because truth is on our side. We don't have to make anything up. We don't have to remember our lies. We simply have to tell the truth. So that was a tremendous victory, historical victory, and hopefully one that will dictate the course of future actions. Of course, if you want to check out A Noble Lie, go to the info shop. It's a 2-hour documentary about the Oklahoma City bombing, and learning about that, it's not just learning about ancient history. First of all, some of the same players are still involved right now. Of course, Eric Holder being the primary one. He's now Attorney General of the United States. He was responsible, initiated, and supervised Operation Fast and Furious, and has taken, I'm sure, a hand in many of the false flag attacks that have occurred since that one fell apart. Eric Holder, back in the late 1990s, was put in charge of the investigation into the Oklahoma City bombing at the behest of the federal government for the Department of Justice. And obviously, we saw where that direction took us and how Eric Holder made his bones covering up for the elite in the very beginning of his career in government. I'm sure he had already been vetted before that, but he definitely made his bones after the Oklahoma City bombing, specifically in covering up the torture murder of Kenneth Trentadue, who was a prisoner in federal custody, mistaken for John Doe number 2 by the FBI and tortured to death. Eric Holder supervised that cover-up. That's who we're dealing with, people. Anyways, I thank you for joining me this Friday. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof. and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. It is the InfoWars store where you can check out a noble lie. Go check that out. Your support is very important. I'd like to comment on that. You know, I've come up to the info operation here in Austin a couple of times, and I doubt there's another talk show host in the world who's employing, you know, as several dozen people as Alex is. I don't even know what the number is. But every single one of these people, you know, they are relying upon the support of the community, which is supporting Alex in his endeavors to expose the truth. So that is why your support is important, to keep us going, to pay the bills, literally, of the operation so we can continue to spread the word and continue to be a thorn in the side of the globalist elite. What Dan Bidandi did in Boston when he shut down a press conference of the governor, the entire world was watching that press conference. And immediately after, when he mentioned a false flag attack, guess what the world did? When they shut down that press conference, he went on Google, they went on Google, and they started looking up false flag attack. That was people across the world who saw that endeavor waking up. That is what they're doing here. That is why your support is very important. Today, like I said, we'll be taking callers later on, but I'd like to get into a little of what Benghazi is going on there, the implications, and compare Benghazi perhaps to the most recent terrorist attack that has struck this country, the Boston bombings. When you look at Benghazi, 4 Americans killed, including a U.S. ambassador, that compound under attack for hours. For those of you unaware of my background, I served in the United States Marine Corps in the infantry. Not long after the Benghazi attacks occurred, I received a call on my own show, Radio Free Oklahoma, on the Logos Radio Network, which is on Monday evenings. And it was a former Marine himself. I did not know him, but he was calling in. He had worked security, embassy security for the ambassador, Chris Stevens, in Jerusalem. And he expressed confusion, amazement that there was no military relief while the embassy in Benghazi was under attack. Because I had brought that up on air. I was like, I served in the Marines. I know how embassy security operations work. I have many friends who serve in that capacity in the Fast Company anti-terrorist team who respond to attacks on embassies, and also embassy guards themselves. And I can tell you this, that had that been a legitimate affair, a simple, if the crowd was simply mad because of some YouTube video that was produced in California several months before, there would have been a military response literally within minutes. Benghazi is right on the coast of Libya. There is a carrier group sitting in the Mediterranean. We have bases all over the Middle East, all over Israel, all over the region, in Italy, across the water. Had that been a legitimate affair, I guarantee within minutes there would have been helicopters circling over that embassy with the Marines boiling out, armed to the teeth. That's not what we saw. What we saw was the embassy for the United States, the most powerful empire in recorded history, under attack for 4 hours by 60 members of a so-called mob with no relief in sight. One of the telltale signs of an inside job, or that the fix is in, is the lack of military or security response when normally there would be. And when an ambassador for the United States is under attack for 4 hours, there should have been massive military response. And there was zero, which tells you someone gave a stand-down order. Someone wanted those people to die. The information coming out of Benghazi is very interesting. It turns out that, of course, there was a weapons pipeline being run out of Benghazi. Those weapons that were used in the Libyan so-called revolution were now being shipped over to Syria, where they're being used now in Syria to fulfill our current foreign policy objectives there. Perhaps the attack had something to do with that. There also has been conjecture, informed conjecture, that the Benghazi affair was supposed to be actually a public relations ploy, which turned into a fiasco, because apparently the thing is, that theory is that they were going to pull off kidnapping the ambassador, and then the Obama administration will pull off the master of foreign policy coup of recovering the ambassador. I don't know if that's true or not, but the point I want to make is when you come up with these grandiose false flag attacks on paper and you try to execute them on the ground, that's two very different things. What they taught us in the Marines, that a plan never survives the first contact with the enemy, and that's usually true. And with these false flag attacks, for the most part, the covert arm of U.S. intelligence can rely upon the mainstream media to cover their tracks. It's not like when people criticize so-called conspiratorial thinking, or what I like to call the counter-narrative, the argument often is, well, you know, the government is so incompetent they can never pull this off. Well, you know what? They are incompetent and they can't pull this off. They mess up left and right. I see it left and right. But they can rely upon the mainstream media to not connect these dots. Even though many of these anomalous facts may be reported at one time or another, it's never packaged for mass consumption when it's time to feed the story to the public. It's never put into the official narrative. And so that's what we're seeing with Benghazi. We're seeing the mainstream media basically complicit with the administration in what appears to be a horribly botched operation. In the light of the Boston bombings, I'm beginning to think that their learning curve is nowhere near the information revolution's learning curve. They seem to not be learning their lessons. What we saw in Benghazi, compared to Boston, was there are several dichotomous facts. One, of course, President Obama hesitated early on to label what happened in Benghazi an act of terrorism, when by definition, any stretch of the word, it actually is terrorism. When you have a crowd that's mad for whatever reason storming an embassy, I mean, that's happened before in American history, and it was called terrorism then. Why is it not terrorism now? With the Boston bombings, you had the initial manhunt, of course, which was botched, and they later settled on to the two Chechen brothers. But you saw a manhunt for specific individuals. In the case of Benghazi, there is no talk of bringing the perpetrators to justice. None at all. The Obama administration is not talking about bringing the attackers of Ambassador Stevens into court or bringing them to Guantanamo or anything. There is no, it's not even on the table to seek justice for Benghazi, because even trying to open up that can of worms and let people to learn even more about it might lead to that story blowing wide open and what actually happened. Now, the congressional Republicans right now are digging into Benghazi. It's probably not for truly altruistic reasons. We can be sure that party politics has a reason to play, but we can utilize this to our advantage and find out what they are finding out about Benghazi. Now, I don't know if they're going to take it all the way. Probably not. Usually these investigations by partisan politicians do not take the investigations all the way where they need to go. But we can still discover information, and the Republicans right now are on it. As much as the media is trying to downplay Benghazi and act like it's ancient history, in many ways they're trying to say it is. But it's not, because it is the current administration. It deals with what is happening in the Middle East, and what exactly were they doing in Libya. Now, the truth on this event will come out. Eventually, we live in the age of information. There are no more secrets. All mysteries are revealed. But are we going to be able to connect the dots on the information and make positive choices? Or are the American people going to forget about the case by the time the truth comes out? Because that's usually how it is. By the time the truth comes out, the case is forgotten. There have been 9 or 12 other more interesting things happening in the news, at least the news playing up these things to distract people away from what is really going on. By the time we discover what really happened in Benghazi, we will have moved on to 9 different scandals, and that is their game plan, at least, and it will not impact what is going on. But the information revolution is not just about revealing information, reporting information. It's about acting on information, using that information to affect our choices. And if we act on the information that the administration lied about Benghazi, is lying about everything else, is lying about the Boston bombing, and if this partisan effort, if it is mainly partisan, I'm going to give the Republicans the benefit of the doubt on this, because they are uncovering some good stuff. If they can take this investigation to where it needs to go. Because where it needs to go, frankly, I mean, I know where it needs to go. But where it needs to go for right now is the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, resigning or being tried for treason. Because she is ultimately responsible for what happened to her ambassador, to her embassy, on her watch. Her signatures on the papers pulling down security from the Benghazi embassy. There was no good reason for that. When Al-Qaeda is flying the black flag of Al-Qaeda over whole towns in Libya, why would you be decreasing security at your embassy? There is no good reason for that. That was before the age of sequester, and the budget certainly allowed. In fact, there were special forces officers saying that they offered to supplement State Department security of the embassy facilities there, an offer which was turned down. They actually turned down offers of assistance for security because obviously they were planning to breach that security at Benghazi and pull off some kind of public relations stunt that obviously went very wrong. Once again, we're not saying the government is all powerful and they control everything. They try to. They try to. And they can rely upon the mainstream media to not hold them accountable. They mess up all the time. They messed up this. They messed up Boston. And you know what? The more mistakes they make, better for us because they expose themselves. Anyways, I am Holland Vandennieuwenhof, a guest hosting the Alex Jones Show this Friday. I thank you for joining me, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I am not Alex Jones. I am guest hosting today, May 10th, this Friday. My name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I am the writer and producer for the film documentary A Noble Lie, which you can get at the InfoWars store. A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. The definitive expose of the Oklahoma City bombing. If you're unfamiliar with that work, let me assure you that our sources, our firsthand sources, our witnesses in the film are police officers, victims, family members, survivors, investigators, people who are directly involved with what happened in Oklahoma City. And the things they saw were at a direct variance with the official narrative being dictated by the government and the mainstream media. This is a theme seen time and time again. People on the ground, first responders, seeing things that are directly contradicting what the government is saying. Now in Benghazi, we're seeing the same thing. We have Gregory Hicks, the number 2 man in Libya. In fact, when Chris Stevens, the ambassador, was killed in the Benghazi affair, Hicks became the number 1 man in Libya. His questions, his testimony about questioning what he was seeing regarding security, what the official narrative was. He started questioning the official narrative of the Benghazi attacks. And for that, he was demoted, made a desk officer after being a service officer for 22 years. And in his own words, he was basically, they let him know that his line of questioning was unwelcome. Now, if we are to expect a full and open inquiry into what happened at Benghazi, what we're seeing is the classic precursor to persecuting whistleblowers. And of course, the Obama administration, contrary once again to its word and to its campaign promises, has been probably, at least in modern history, the most energetic in prosecuting whistleblowers who work for the government, even more so than President Bush. And, all of the liberal sentiment behind the Obama administration, I can even respect genuine liberals who are perhaps collectivists and believe in socialism. If you actually believe that, I can respect that viewpoint. But if you support the Obama administration, I now know that you don't even mean what you say. The Obama administration is not even liberal or progressive, or it's not even socialist. It's fascist. It's a warmongering extension of the corporate regime that, and he's basically, like I said, replicating the first 2 terms of Bush. And all the celebrities and rock stars out there who are still supporting the Obama administration, look at what is happening. Compared to what is happening with this administration, the actions that they are doing with your ideals and with your sentiment. And if you cannot reconcile the two, one or the other needs to go. You can't have both. Regarding Benghazi, we're seeing the lies left and right. And I'm opening up the phones right now. The phone number is 1-800-259-9231. I repeat, 800-259-9231. Please call in and we will engage the audience. Now, regarding Benghazi, if you go back to the beginning, you remember that they blamed it on a supposed YouTube video. And for that reason, this crowd in this one location in Benghazi, the only location in the world where people were getting mad about this video, they just happened to attack the embassy and kill the ambassador. Now, of course, I'm a filmmaker myself. I work in film. So when I looked at the so-called YouTube video, the Benghazi video, I don't even know what the title is, that supposedly inflamed the crowd, that caused these attacks, within about 2 minutes, I realized, oh, this is not a film. This is not even, there was no way someone was trying to sell this to anyone for investment. This literally is a PR op. I could tell by looking at it. That is not a product that anyone was trying to take seriously, and surely not the crowd in Benghazi. The film, or the so-called film, the video, is basically unwatchable. And it makes no sense. And that is not why the crowd at Benghazi decided to attack that embassy. That is a cover story, and a very weak cover story. And I mentioned before that, of course, the Obama administration at first was reluctant to regard the Benghazi attacks as terrorism. Why is that? Because they don't want the anti-terrorism apparatus that they have helped build up inflicted upon themselves, and asking questions, of course. It looks like we got a caller, and like I said, we are opening up the phone lines, 800-259-9231. 259-9231. Call in, and we will discuss your topic or your question. So let's go to Mark from Texas. Hello, Mark. Welcome to InfoWars.
Hey, Holland.
Yes.
Holland, it's an honor speaking to you. I just ordered your film online. I saw it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark, we're getting ready to go to break in about 10 seconds. Can you hold on to the other side, and we can continue the conversation?
Sure, you bet.
Well, thank you for calling in. Like you're listening to the Alex Jones Show. I am the guest host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We will be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof, this May 10th, Friday. Looks like we're going to go back to our caller, Mark from Texas. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. You were saying that you had purchased a copy of A Noble Lie. Is there anything else?
Yes, sir. And what bothers me is nobody's even ever heard of this. And I have passed it around. I even sent it to another talk show. I don't know if you ever heard of the Lynn Willie talk show. It's here in Texas. Also,
I guess not.
I sent copies. And because I want people to, to understand that this stuff is real. I didn't used to believe this stuff. I used to think, some nutcases, conspiracy theories. No. And because I tell people, look, you can Google police officer Donald Browning.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google the late, murdered, by the way, Officer Terrence Yankee.
Mm-hmm.
And also recently the late, what's his name, Heidelberg? Hoppy
Heidelberg, yes, of course, who passed last year also.
I'm sorry we lost him recently. You can Google those things, and you can see these are not fly-by-night witnesses. These are people who really were there and seeing what happened, or were personally threatened, as was Hoppy and, of course, police officer Browning.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said when I was saying earlier in the show, I mean, we were talking to the actual people involved in these events. Police officers had their lives threatened by FBI agents. Don Browning was on the InfoWars show not long after release, talking about the fact that in police headquarters, Don Browning, an Oklahoma City police officer, one of the first responders who helped save lives. Yes, he was confronted by an FBI agent who told them that he and his wife might lose their lives if he continued to ask questions. That is the caliber of people we are dealing with. We are dealing with simple thugs who threaten the lives of innocent people if you ask questions. We're seeing that being played out also in Benghazi, where people who ask questions are having at least their careers threatened now, and if they keep on asking, even more will get threatened. Mark, is there anything else?
Yeah, and I also tell him, by the way, that Officer Browning, forget just the fact he was a police officer, but he's a Vietnam vet, Marine Vietnam vet, actually a rifleman in Vietnam. So, and I try to tell people, if Oklahoma was a false flag, everything that's going on now, the shooting at Newtown, the shooting in Colorado, and other shootings, and including what happened in Boston, you can believe is a good chance the government is behind it. Stop admiring the FBI. The FBI has become a criminal organization, as is the CIA. It's unfortunate, but this is what's happening. And by the way, did you ever hear of William Cooper?
Yes, I have.
I'm reading a book right now called Behold the Pale Horse.
The famous book by William Cooper, yes.
Yeah, and in it, he writes, he wrote this book in 1990 now. He predicted a lot of the shootings and stuff. As a matter of fact, he said they already happened and blamed it on CIA mind control, including using drugs such as Prozac. If you want, I can read you page 225.
Oh, that's all right. I've actually read the book, and I'm sure many of our listeners have, but they can definitely look that up. It's valuable to reference that. I thank you, Mark, for calling in to the Alex Jones Show. Thank you very much, and also for your purchase of a Noble Lie, and of course, spread that around. And this is something that I will relate to the audience, and time again, this is what I was striving for with the Noble Lie. What we were striving for was for that product to be a wake-up tool. And I have had more than one person come to me and tell me that they were able to wake up stubborn members of their family or their friends who were unable to grasp a lot of the information, but seeing it laid out in the way it was in a Noble Lie allowed them to make the conclusions that can only be gotten from a sober examination of the evidence. So it does serve as a valuable wake-up tool, and in that I am glad. So I thank you, Mark, for checking out a Noble Lie, for spreading the word, and for calling in. Excellent. Well, thank you for calling in, Mark. We have a number of callers on the line. We'll get to that in a second. Like I said, I thank you, Mark, for bringing up that topic. When you verify that at least one event in American history, like the Oklahoma City bombing, was indeed a false flag attack, that did happen. And then you ascertain the fact that no one was held accountable, no one in government was fired, no one was held accountable for treason, for mass murder of their own citizens, for perpetuating that attack. And I'd like to clarify some things. When I say inside job, that it was an inside job, it was. But it's not that every street agent on the scene is involved in a cover-up of the fact that a criminal arm of the government blew up its own facility or blew up its own people to affect a political agenda. It's not. And that the people on the ground, and that's what you see in the use of these military drills. Like in Boston, you saw the men in the black hoodies and the khaki tactical pants and the desert boots with the same backpack as the Chechen suspects. Obviously, there was a military drill, police drill in effect at the time. Now, the purpose of the drill, which is the common denominator many times to these false flag attacks, is twofold. One, it allows the movement of assets into place. It provides a plausible deniability and security for those assets that they're moved into place. Oh, we're just part of an exercise or a drill. Number two, after the fact, after it goes live, after it blows up, after there are casualties on the ground that they weren't expecting, the players were not expecting, the drill effectuates the cover-up, because now all the people involved in what they initially thought was a legitimate law enforcement or military operation are now complicit in mass murder. And they're going to keep their mouth shut. And that's even if they care to report it. For the most part, all the people on the ground are covering up what they expect and what they think is simply a massive foul-up by their agency, which, of course, happens time and time again. And let's not leave it out of the purview of government employees to cover up their own mistakes. So the drill is twofold: to move the assets into place and to help effectuate the cover-up after the fact by letting all the law enforcement officers or military officers involved, let them know, oh, by the way, this is part of an operation, but it's top secret and you can't talk about it. Of course, I'm not making that up. We saw the same thing after the Oklahoma City bombing. Something that's not in a Noble Lie was the fact that several police officers on the scene who first responded were sequestered, brought together separately by FBI agents, and told that there was an undercover operation going on involving the Ryder truck, involving what happened in Oklahoma City, and for security reasons, ongoing undercover operation, you cannot talk about it. That is the security at work. They use that cover story time and time again. And the one thing I have delineated from my study of government false flag attacks is that they will not vary the formula if it's successful. There's no reason for them to. If it works, they will keep on doing it, almost to where it loses, I'm sorry to put it this way, but it loses its originality. They literally use the same standard operating procedure every time because it works. Well, it's going to keep on working until we hold them accountable, until we put enough pressure on the mainstream media to keep on asking those questions that are going to make the government uncomfortable. And until that happens, they're going to continue doing things the same way. But I think after Boston, they may have to change their methods of operation, because Boston was very sloppy. Benghazi was very sloppy. Maybe they're losing their edge because they're not competing with the truth anymore because they can rely upon the media to just cover everything up. I don't know. But they're not very good these days. And I don't want it to be that way, but it is. And viewing the lens of Benghazi and the Boston bombings through what I've discovered firsthand with the Oklahoma City bombing is amazing. I've interviewed firsthand players in the Oklahoma City bombing, members who were involved with the neo-Nazi right back in the mid-'90s. One of those men, Johnny Bangerter, informed me that prior to the Oklahoma City bombing, he was in Las Vegas area at the time. He was being approached by an informant who was asking him to bomb a federal building with ammonium nitrate and Tovex boosters. That does sound familiar because that's exactly what played out several months later on April 19th, 1995 in Oklahoma City. This guy who was approaching Johnny Bangerter pitching a script, literally pitching a script, which later played out. Now, the spooky thing about this man who was pitching the script was an ATF informant. So we have is direct proof of the ATF using their informants, selling the OKC script around the country to various neo-Nazi groups until someone obviously was foolish enough to take the bait. So you see the fact that they are approaching people before these attacks, trying to get them to effectuate these attacks. We've seen this in the War on Terror. Time and time again, with the so-called the Christmas tree bomber and other incidents that were almost forgotten now because of these larger events. And what you see the SOP is the FBI sends an informant to approach some confused kid who's working at McDonald's, and he talks to him over some so-called jihadi website, which of course is a CIA front. And this young kid is talked into jihad, paid to do it. They pay for his apartment. And they put him on the no-fly list so he can't get away from his handler who is freaking him out. He tries to get a job in Alaska, so they put him on the no-fly list so he can't get a job. So what does he have to do now? He has to ask for more money from his FBI handler. He's now even more under control. And later on, of course, that FBI handler hands him a cell phone and tells him to blow up something. So he dials the number and is arrested. He's thrown in jail for the rest of his life. And the War on Terror is given more justification for its existence. So these operations are happening all the time. All it takes for an operation for something real to happen, a real bomb, is to take one of these existing, always ongoing sting operations, and instead of putting in fake explosives, like they say they do these times, put in a real bomb, like they did at Oklahoma City, and watch it blow up, and watch every agent on the scene scramble for cover and start coming up with cover stories, because they may not exactly know what happened, but they know they'll get in trouble for whatever happened. So they're going to cover themselves. So the cover-up after the fact is also not based upon universal knowledge of the attack. Everyone is covering up everything for their own reasons. And that's probably what we're going to see at Benghazi. Let's go to our next caller. We got a number of callers on the line. Like I said, this is Friday. I'm the guest host in place of Alex, and I like to talk to his audience. So let's go to Steve from Costa Rica. Hello, Steve.
Oh, hi. Great. I'm glad to meet you. It was wonderful to get on talking to you guys. It's just amazing how people just aren't being aware of the corruption that's going on there and these false flags. Things are becoming so obvious that it's just phenomenal that they just don't get it.
A lot of them do get it, but it's not in their interest to talk about it.
Well, I don't know, they're being lazy or something. You know, I'm doing everything I can from down here because I talk pretty crazy myself, and you know, I'm doing the YouTube stuff. And
well, when you live in an insane world, being a little crazy is probably not an entirely bad thing.
Well, what the Chicos call me down here is gringo loco, so I might have deserved that in some respect because they know I'm not your normal gringo down here. Mm-hmm. And but it takes a while to get a little respect down here. But one of the things too with this whole corruption stuff and this whole banking structure that's affected Costa Rica, which I'm really so sad to see, is the last two presidents have borrowed so much money, billions and billions and hundreds of millions of dollars from these same banksters in Europe that have been repossessing Greece and Cyprus that are going for Italy, Spain, Portugal, and they're going to be coming here. They already done it to Stockton, California. They repossessed Stockton. People don't understand. They're taking their pension funds. You know, when are they going to wake up? These
exactly. What's happening what has happened in Europe, what has happened in Greece, what they tried to pull off in Iceland is just a precursor of what they're going to try to pull off.
Cool.
We're not asking people to make fantabulous, inventions here. Just learn the lessons of very recent history and apply them to what's going on today. What they pulled off, what they tried to pull off in Iceland, what they're pulling off in Greece, Spain, Italy, is what they're going to do in this country when the bill comes. We are no different, and we are not immune from history. Anything else, Steve?
Piece by piece, like a cancer. It's spreading like a cancer, not like a virus, because that goes too fast, but piece by piece, and they're going to consume everybody, and they're going to consume this poor country too. And these people know it down here because there is austerity down here. Everything has gone up, the cost of living, although it's a heck of a lot cheaper than the United States, but still, in their perspective, in their economy, everything has gone up, and the locals don't like it, and they're pretty upset with their president. You know, she's one of the first women presidents, and she got bought off by the United States because they.
Well, that's what happens. I mean, Costa Rica is definitely within the sphere of influence of the United States, and they're not going to allow an independent to run that country for too long. I thank you for calling in, Steve.
Great. Good talking to you. Have a great day then.
Awesome, awesome. I have a lot of friends who have decided to go the expatriate route, who are in Ecuador and Costa Rica and other countries. I don't blame them at all. I mean, if you want to go to Costa Rica, I fully sympathize. I'm sure it's a beautiful country. I myself was born in this country, and I've already made a name for myself saying the things I do, so it's already too late for me to run. It's not in my nature anyway. But I fully understand those people who flee tyranny that is happening in this country, who have seen history and seen it playing out again in this country. You would be a fool to not read the signs and take action. Either get out or go to battle, one or the other. I'm not passing judgment on those who get out. I think you're wise to avoid what's going on in this country. I perhaps am not the smart one for sticking around and fighting it out, but then again, it's not the first time I've been accused of that. Anyways, we're going to our next caller, John from Texas. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show.
Hey, what's going on, boss? I really appreciate what y'all guys are doing out there, and keep spreading the word. You know, I ain't gonna sit here, I ain't gonna run either. You know, I look at it, and I already know what they're trying to do to us, and I'm not dealing with it. You know, I'm not having it. But I just got some breaking news. This is the reason why I'm calling, because you know I'm an everyday listener. My first time calling.
Excellent.
But I got some breaking news. The Texas bombing, the West Texas bombing.
Are you talking about the fertilizer plant in Waco, Texas? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I'm looking at my news just now. I recorded it and everything. I got footage of it, but they caught a guy, and he said at first he was talking about, it was a fire, and then they caught him, the EMS guy, and he.
Okay, you say caught the man. Is that caught on private communications between first responders? Is that on the news?
No. He says that they caught the guy. Federal agents got this guy now, and he's an EMS guy, EMS or EMT, one of the two. His name is Brian something McKnight. I got the video. We have the article online right now on InfoWars. I'm looking at it right now. So it looks like there is some developing information in that investigation. I was wondering exactly how that fertilizer plant exactly went up. Being on fire doesn't necessarily mean it'll explode. Anyways, I thank you for calling into the Alex Jones Show. We're going to break right now. We're going to go to our next callers. I thank you for calling in. And for those of you listening, we will be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm Holland Vandennieuwenhof, guest hosting this May 10th. All the callers on the line, be patient. I will get to you as soon as I can. Today we are discussing, as a direct topic, the information coming out of the Benghazi attacks on September 11th of last year. We can cover other topics, of course. There's a lot of other topics. I really want to get into the fact that the State Department has shut down the 3D printing plans that are being distributed, that they're citing an international arms control treaty to shut down a website that's distributing plans on making a gun, printing a gun on a 3D printer. Of course, Alex has had Cody Wilson on the show in the past talking about this new evolution in manufacturing. the fact that now engineers are going to have more power than politicians. I think that's a new good trend. I've had my dealings with a number of politicians over the year. I've not been impressed with their IQ. However, engineers, I'm fully confident, can pull off their plans competently. And the latest news coming out of Cody Wilson and his enterprise, his endeavors, is that the State Department has shut down his website and its distribution of files that allow 3D printers to print up the Liberator handgun, which is a ABS plastic handgun that can be made entirely from a 3D printer minus the nail, which you can buy at Home Depot, as a firing pin, a weapon that fires apparently most popular pistol calibers. It's based on the Liberator pistol from World War II, which is a one-shot pistol dropped behind the lines to the French resistance. The idea being that you took the Liberator in your hand and you walked up to a German sentry, you dispatched the sentry with your Liberator, and you took his weapon, and now you were armed to fight the resistance. Cody Wilson has invoked that name for the Liberator and his new printable handgun, and the State Department has struck back by shutting down the website and its distribution because apparently foreign users are offloading or downloading those files, and that violates some international arms control treaty. So we're seeing the pushback on this gun control fight. Now, what Cody Wilson and his people are doing is circumventing the whole political process by conventionally which they restrict and control our behavior through taxation, through laws, through bans, through prisons. When you can print up whatever is your heart's desire, if it be a gun, it really doesn't matter how many pieces of paper are written on, how many words are written on a piece of paper signed by the governor. That is not reality. What is happening on the ground is reality. And now we're going to be able to see the capability to manufacture your own weaponry. Now, some people may be predicting some kind of Mad Max chaotic world in such an event, but it's not too much different from what's going on now because you can purchase basically whatever you want. You're just going to be able to circumnavigate government restriction on your freedom. So perhaps the new fight for freedom is not going to be in the halls of state capitals, of the White House, of the congressional building in D.C. Maybe the future fight for freedom will be in laboratories, be on computers. And actually, I think that's what's happening now. We see a lot of people on the edge of the technological revolution are freedom-oriented, directly so, involved in the fight. We see it. We want the hackers and engineers and technological gurus on our side, because this obsolete system that they're trying to keep in place over us, controlling our behavior, is obsolete. They're refusing to come to grips with it, and now they're striking back by trying to ban things, like with the State Department banning defense distributed from getting these plans on how to make guns out there. We can fight back. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. I'm Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Holland Vandennieuwenhof. Let's go to our next caller, Greg from Colorado. Hello, Greg, and welcome to The Alex Jones Show. You're speaking with Holland Vandennieuwenhof. Welcome to the show.
Hello?
Yes, Greg. You're on the air.
Yeah, I'm here. I got a question I haven't heard anybody ask, and one of the battle cries seems to be quo bono, who benefits?
Mm-hmm.
And on all the gun
qui bono, yes.
ammo shortages and stuff, it seems like the gun manufacturers and the ammo manufacturers are benefiting. And I wondered if anybody had traced up the ownership of the gun manufacturers and stuff.
Well, that's a very good question, Greg. And what you're seeing actually is pushback from many players in the gun industry, including Magpul out of California and other companies, PTR out of Connecticut. They're pulling out of their home states where they were founded, where they conduct their operations, because their state governments are restricting their ability to sell their products. That is an admirable and noble effort on their part to exert effort to get away from there. We're seeing other gun companies who are being strangely silent. Now, I'll give you a hint as to the gun companies that are being strangely silent in this fight. They also receive hefty government contracts for the war on terror. Remington, HK, FN, those are the big gun manufacturers in this company. And the reason they are big is because they're making M4s and squad automatic weapons and M240 Gulfs for the U.S. military for their war on terror. That's where the real money in guns is government contracts, not selling Ruger deer rifles
to Jim Bob in Oklahoma City, okay? That is not a major money industry. It's money industry, but it's not anything compared to the money and the connections that are being forged with the major gun manufacturers that are dealing in government contracts. And those gun manufacturers have been strangely silent in this gun control fight. Maybe they don't want to jeopardize their government contracts. So if you really want to look into a conspiracy regarding the gun manufacturers, look into the gun manufacturers who are making their money off selling guns to the government.
Awesome. Thanks for answering my question.
You're welcome, Greg, and thank you for calling in. Let's go to our next caller, Scott from Missouri, the Show Me State. Hello, Scott. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show.
Hi. I had some comments to make, and then I had a question. It's regards to waking people up.
Okay.
And consider a hypothetical situation. Let's just pretend for one moment that tomorrow on Fox News they aired, let's say, the director of the CIA literally confessing the whole operation to be an inside job. Let's take Boston. We'll just take that.
Okay.
He confesses that Boston's an inside job, blah, 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 and let's say there's a 5-minute clip.
It's a nice fantasy to indulge in, but go ahead.
What's that?
It's a nice fantasy to indulge in, someone actually telling the truth in government, but go ahead.
Of course, it would never happen, but let's say there's a 5-minute segment. There's a whole talking head thing, and anyway. And then after that, the mainstream media says, oh, wait, we screwed up. We weren't supposed to air that. And, of course, there's just a blackout, like always. My point is I could take that video.
Mm-hmm.
I could show it to 10 people. They're all going to say I'm nuts.
Mm-hmm.
They're still not going to wake up. Even if they believe the video, they'll sit there and ponder it in their head for a moment, and then they'll just go back to what they're doing, voting for Democrats or Republicans. The point is I've woken some people up, just like some people have woken me up, but most of the people that I deal with, including my family, they're so stubborn that they just don't understand. They think that, well, on one side, that they believe in the whole Democrat thing, and they watch CNN. The other side, they watch the whole Fox thing, and they believe in the Republican philosophy. And I keep trying to tell them, I said, they're all crooks. 9/11's an inside job. I go through the whole spiel, the whole, and it doesn't matter. My point is, let's just say George Bush did Wile E. Coyote style push the plunger for the Trade Center.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Take the '93 bombing. It's all on record that it was an.
Oh yeah, I mean what you're arguing is not so much hypothetical; it's happened before. And referencing 1993, the first attack of the World Trade Centers, they admitted it was their bomb. They cooked them. They told them to do it. It was in the New York Times, 60 Minutes, and of course, nothing occurs. I thank you for calling in, Scott. And we're going to break right now. And for those of you listening, we'll be right back after these messages.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this live Friday edition as we broadcast worldwide. I am coming to you from a South Texas highway as I drive down the road via the magic of audio Skype. And Holland Vandennieuwenhof, a filmmaker and researcher and talk show host in his own right, who I've known for many years, is kind of the master of ceremonies, the MC today, who is basically the traffic cop. We're going to have also David Knight at the bottom of the hour pop in with a bunch of other breaking news, including new developments in the West fertilizer explosion, where they're now saying it might be foul play. We're going to be looking into that as well. And obviously Benghazi, then Jakari Jackson will pop in with some special reports coming up in the last 30 minutes. And we're going to continue in the next 2 hours with open phones. I will be live, of course, in studio this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. But the reason I like to have Holland Vandennieuwenhof in is that I listen to his show whenever I get a chance. And, of course, he's comfortable on his own show. And he's a first-class brain and does a great job. You can hear he's a little bit nervous doing this one, going from hundreds of thousands to millions of listeners. But he's doing a great job today, so I want to welcome him into the second hour. I know some stations and XM, now Channel 244, join us in the second and third hours. And, of course, we also have InfoWars Nightly News. But I just wanted to, tell you why I have Holland Vandennieuwenhof hosting the show. He was a Marine Corps, rifle leader, and he's just a great researcher. And I've heard his analysis, read his analysis, and it's been spot on so many points. Plus, with the case of Oklahoma City, he got the film made that is the only professionally done definitive work, 18, 19 years after that tragic event in 1995, open and shut, who the players were, the bombs inside the buildings, who planted them, directly from the police officers and other survivors. So I always promote that film. I'm also in it. A Noble Lie, 1995, available on InfoWarsStore.com. And get it, show it to friends and family, because they will then understand false flag. You see something like Benghazi, or you see something like, something out there like the Boston bombing. When you study covert history, military history, black op history, staged event history, and there's hundreds of declassified French, Italian, British, German, Nazi, Russian, communist, czarist before them, Maoist staged events. When you learn the Romans were obsessed with staging events and blaming it on their enemies, when you learn that this is such a part of history, then you look at each new event and say, well, is it the usual culprit or is it a real event? And there are real events. There are real events, kind of like there are four-leaf clovers, but they're very, very rare in a grove of clover, in a patch of clover. You can look for 10 hours and maybe find one mutation that is the real lone wolf anomaly. Very, very rare. Maybe the shootings in Norway, maybe that was real, but there was a drill there and a stand down as well. They use the drill so if their operatives get caught, they can then say it was just part of the drill. They use it to also confuse everybody when the event happens, so no one knows who was involved, because there were so many people there taking part in something that mirrors it. But in the case of Benghazi, for those that don't know, when I've covered Bilderberg in the U.S., last year and 4 years before that, almost 5 years ago in Virginia, they had Marines in plain clothes following us, breaking in our room. We had some stuff taken. We believe it was them. I never made a big deal about that on air. Cracking into our phones and threatening us and telling us what we were talking about on the phone so they know it was the government. Flipping us off. We have photos of this in plain clothes. Marines coming in and sitting down next to us in the restaurant at our hotel saying, hey, you want to attack the State Department? And then they later just admitted who they were and said, we're making sure you're not planning anything. Okay, so the Marines guard the embassies. And Holland, of course, is a Marine, and he's talked to Marines, but it's on record the procedure. They had a base a mile away, less than a mile. They had helicopter bases 5 miles away. They had predators in the sky. The al-Qaeda forces were hired to be the head of security in Benghazi. There was a stand down, not a 6-hour, more like an 8-hour, from when they began to desperately call for help, and the group was massing out front. And Holland, we talked privately about what you believe happened, and I wish you'd break down some of that, because a lot of my other sources agree. They were meant to attack the place, use the protest as the cover to get the missiles in the warehouse behind it, so the government could have plausible deniability later and say al-Qaeda stole the heat seekers, which they're now showing on London Guardian and Associated Press. They're very proud of it. But regardless, when they lied, we now have a congresswoman up on Infowars.com saying, we ought to play that clip later if we have time, when David Knight comes in, saying, no, Obama knew. Obama ordered the stand down. Of course he did. Of course Hillary was in charge of the State Department. Once it started, they wanted those people dead. And the two SEALs assigned to CIA who broke orders to stand down, who went and shot at the guys from behind and made it go a lot longer, they are what made it incredibly obvious to CENTCOM, NATO, and all of them that there was a stand down. Because NATO was in charge. See, that's why the globalists, Obama has transferred power to NATO, because now he can plausibly deny and cut the Pentagon chain out of things. This is a coup. We've had the coup. And now the coup is obvious that globalists have taken over America. This is what we're getting at. So I want you to be able to break that down, Holland, and also continue to take some more calls. But for those that study this, it came out day one that they stood down. It came out day one they had predators over it and got caught lying. 5 days after it happened, they had Rice, ambassador of the UN, say that this wasn't terror, no one thought it. If terror isn't hundreds of guys, first 200, then 300, then sometimes it's 400 or more, with anti-aircraft weapons at point-blank range and grenade launchers and bazookas and heavy machine guns, and a stand-down with inside knowledge of how to break in and how to get past the countermeasures. This is ridiculous. And again, it's hiding in plain view. And what's happened is they're using 1960s and 70s events when they controlled the newspapers and they controlled all the media to still run these events, and it doesn't work anymore. So, Holland, I wanted you, before we go to break, to spend the next 5 minutes. We know they're lying about Benghazi, but what do you think exactly happened there, and how big will this be? And here's the big one. What will they stage? I said in the first hour yesterday, they might stage an attack on Obama to make him the victim. Horrible idea to call for violence. Horrible idea to wish for harm on Obama, as we've heard some say. That only turns him into a victim. He is a puppet himself. You know,
I would take the bullet for Obama, Alex. I would take it rather than listen to the martyrdom afterwards.
Absolutely. So what will they do? A new war? Escalation of Syria? Another false flag? What do you think they're going to try to pull? That's the big one, because this is one of the biggest political events in the last 100 years in this country. This is a giant, huge event where they have been caught pants down, hand in cookie jar. This is huge. Holland.
Again, they've been caught, and the false flag attack has become, like I said, standard operating procedure. It's literally how they start a new program now. It's like, well, we want to implement a new agenda. What do? Well, we're going to have to create something. We're going to have to create reality. Karl Rove talked about this openly during the Bush administration. They are now putting it on the ground. And what we're going to see in the future, Alex, I think obviously is an attack that's going to be blamed on domestic dissent. They still need to play that card, and perhaps they were trying to play it during the Boston bombings. And that would be hard for me to impart the frustration, the feelings I was going through watching that go down nearly on the anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, on Patriots Day, when these significant dates in effect, and we see terrorism again striking America. Like Alex said, I served the United States Marine Corps. I was a rifle squad leader, and I took my oath seriously to the Constitution to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I nearly yelled those words in the recruiting station when I gave the oath, because I meant it. And I told my Marines also that if I ever get the order to disarm the American people, the officer who gives that order, well, he's going to be a very unlucky man that day. And I'm headed home to defend my family. And they were good with that. They were very good with that. I actually like to make a revelation on air here on the Alex Jones Show. One of the arresting officers of the Chechen bombers, the one they found in the boat, one of the arresting officers was actually in my rifle squad in the Marine Corps. We were very close. We got in a lot of scraps together. We are brothers. And he is unable to provide me with information. And when Anderson Cooper had the Watertown SWAT team on air, in gear, talking about their noble capture of the suspect, I noticed that my friend, who was the officer who cuffed that man, was not in that crowd. He was not being interviewed. In fact, he was in the Caribbean on vacation. So they actually sequestered him. They sent him away, and he is unable to talk to anyone, especially me. So the fix is in on that. They don't want people talking about, the arresting officers talking about what they saw, the fact that in that boat, that kid had no weapon, that they riddled the boat with bullets, trying to kill him. I was very surprised when they found that boy alive.
And then when he stood up, no blood out of the throat, then he cut his throat out. And now we have the video and the audio of them saying, don't shoot, we didn't do it. You have the witnesses saying they didn't shoot. They had orders to get rid of those guys, just like the 2 dead cops, friendly fire, just like the cops shooting 9 people in New York last year, trying to cover that up, saying it was a mass shooting. This happens over and over again. I mean, we would be crazy to believe what known liars are telling us over and over again. But, Holland, what you said, I know we're going to break. When we come back, what you said at the very start of the show, you should repeat that. That was an InfoWar battle over the truth at the beginning and middle and now throughout the next phase of the Boston bombing. Clearly we've been lied to. Clearly those guys were patsies. Clearly the older brother was part of a CIA State Department funded Muslim extremist infiltrator group. Because when they say groups out of Chechnya and Dagestan attacked America, those groups are all run by the globalists.
They support the American government. I talked to a special forces operator who was shooting Russian cops in Chechnya in the mid-90s at the behest of this government. The Chechen groups support the U.S. government.
They were created 100% on record funded.
Because they were a tool against the Russians.
Absolutely. We'll be right back with Holland Vandennieuwenhof.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm the guest host today, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I'd like to reiterate a point I was talking about earlier, talking about winning the info war, winning the info battle. For those of you waiting for the revolution to occur, it's happening now. There's no reason to wait. The information revolution is now. We are in 3 phases of resistance. Right now, we're in the ideological phase. The information war, of which Alex Jones and his operation are the tip of the spear, as we've seen in recent events. And what happened in Boston was a major historical battle in that information war. And we won hands down, won that battle. We're winning the war. Hillary Clinton herself admitted on TV that we are losing the information war. That was a call for help. And they are hurting. They are losing. That's right. And we are winning. What we saw in Boston, the fact that the official story was unraveling as it was being laid out, tells you that. So what's going to be the next learning paradigm for the information revolution? Perhaps unraveling these operations before they occur. Perhaps we can save lives. That is the challenge I'm issuing to this new information paradigm, to what we're doing now. We need to stop these attacks before they occur. We need to start saving lives directly. Show that to the world. Not only are we exposing this, we are saving lives. Are you still there, Alex?
Yes, I am, and I'm going to turn the broadcast over to you and the listeners, and David Knight coming in with some breaking news in the next segment. But again, it's a great responsibility. When I get up here on air and I tell the listeners, hey, we're the tip of the spear, we're fighting the tyranny, we need your support, it's because it is creepy. It is scary to sit there and see the international media attack us and say, don't listen to us. And it's scary to know that we're effective, and it's scary to know that we're actually having victories against them. I mean, it's bullying, it's exciting, it's good because I want liberty, but it's also creepy to know that humanity does have power, and that we have individually taken action against these people, and that because we built a platform to do it, that we're having a huge effect. So that's why we ask listeners for their prayers, their support. And Garrison was asked, Jim Garrison, people said, well, how are you still alive with all the JFK info? They've now had a top Republican come out and point out what we already know, that LBJ basically gave the order to have him killed with people above him. And he said, well, you've got to stay in the sunshine. You've got to stay in the light. You've got to stay big. Our only answer going through this black hole is to go in, through, and beyond. We've got to go 110%, because it's the old sports adage. As soon as you don't go 100%, that's when you get hurt. Anybody that plays sports knows that. Mm-hmm. It's not the football play where you go over 100% as hard as you can that you get hurt. It's when you aren't paying attention, you don't go 100%. It's when you're lazy. None of us can be lazy. And the globalists are cornered right now. Everything they do basically turns to crap. But still they're in control. And Hillary 2 years ago said, we're losing the info war, emergency. Brzezinski's saying that. And so they're trying to set up a police state. But we need the people in government who aren't evil to realize this isn't a joke. And your naivete is going to empower this total takeover. And the general public, not just government. We get the government we deserve. We have been passive. We have been pathetic. And we have let so much of this evil take over. But here's the final big issue. They are going to try to stage something to get themselves out of this. And we need to put pressure on the Republicans to go all the way. There needs to be impeachment. There needs to be indictment. They have been caught ordering the stand down. They have been caught lying to Congress. They have been caught lying, just like Fast and Furious. They cannot get away with this Benghazi thing. This is so cut and dry, and I quite frankly am surprised that it's come out this hardcore. And that the State Department people weren't bigger scumbags and have all this courage. That gives me faith that there are still a lot of good people, but we've got to stand behind good people. You can look at the body language of Hicks and others. Those are good men and women. They're freaked out. They're putting their lives on the line. They know what really happened. It's more than a stand down. It was an op to kill those people and then cover it up. And I saw Obama in Austin yesterday, video on the news live. He looked doubly arrogant and smug. That's a cover. These are men just like us. They can be defeated. We can restore the republic. But we've got to have the will and to believe we can win. The globalists are not all powerful. And if God be with us, who can stand against us? So, again, spread the word about the broadcast. Support our local AM/FM affiliates. This is history, what's happening. And we're willing to do it, so support us. and we're going to support others that stand up for truth. Holland Vandennieuwenhof, I'm going to hand things over to you. I'll be back Sunday live 4 to 6, and David Knight's coming up with you and phone calls. All this and a lot more straight ahead, and great job to the crew.
Thank you, Alex. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. I'm guest hosting today, May 10th, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I have in studio Special InfoWars reporter David Knight with some topics, some timely news. Before we go into that, we had a caller call in earlier announcing the news that someone had been investigated, or there was an opening criminal investigation into the West Texas fertilizer plant explosion. That appears to be true. We just have been handed information by the producers here in Alex's studio that an EMT or EMSA worker is indeed under investigation for perhaps being responsible for the explosion there in Waco, Texas. Obviously, it was very strange when a fertilizer plant in Waco, Texas, it goes up in fire just a couple days before the anniversary of Waco. My hackles were on edge there. And apparently, this paramedic named Bryce Reed was arrested for possessing a destructive device, according to local reports. Reed had been a speaker at a memorial service for the victims of the explosion. It's not clear that the two new developments are related. Now, keep in mind, this person may or may not be involved. We've seen in recent history the FBI pinning major crimes on people, Elvis impersonators. Apparently, we're involved with the poison letters, the D.C. It seems like they're kind of replaying the mid-'90s when they were using Richard Jewell as the bogeyman for so many things. They're doing the same thing now. So this paramedic may or may not be involved, it may or not be guilty, and it may or may not be true. So it is developing, it is breaking, and we will definitely keep an eye on it. But David Knight?
That's right, yeah, there's a lot of suspicious stuff about that. And we've had a lot of people asking us to do more reporting on that. We've tried to stay on the obvious false flag with the obvious agenda, which is the Boston bombing. Personally, I felt that if the government was involved in this in some way, if it wasn't likely that it was an accident, but if it was just a criminal case, because there was a long-standing lawsuit between them and Monsanto, that had been kind of dormant for a while. So it wasn't really clear what motivations anybody had, either personal or government motivations in this. If anything, because like you said, the timing and the location looked like it might be a distraction. We wanted to stay on point. We wanted to stay on the Boston bombing because it was so obviously a false flag. Yeah. And speaking of that, I got to tell you, this first time we've met, I really love your documentary, A Noble Lie. And we've mentioned that many, many times from day one with this Boston bombing, and the fact that there were certain elements that were present that made it obvious that there was something going on here that wasn't exactly what the government was telling us. The fact that we had eyewitnesses saying that it was a drill at the beginning and at the end, and even the police chief saying that they had an unusually large number of people there. They were paying special attention to the finish line and all that sort of thing, as well as the pictures that surfaced and that sort of thing. But as we told people, your documentary, A Noble Lie, it took a long time for that to come out. There were elements at the very beginning that were clear. I remember back when it happened, and I remember the New American carrying Brigadier General
Benton K. Parton. Yes, the New American did excellent work.
And he was a specialist on that. He said the blast pattern it doesn't make any sense. You don't get a blast that big. You don't get that kind of a pattern from that. So there's something else going on. So it was clear from that standpoint. But that was back in the 90s. We didn't have alternative media then. We didn't have people that were staying on this stuff in real time. The government media basically was just, oh yeah, that's the way it is. So, but the stuff that you turned up took a long time to come out. Took a lot of investigation on your part. Same thing happened with Mike McNulty and Waco. He did a series of documentaries on Waco over a 10-year period of time. And as time goes on, the truth eventually leaks out, even when you've got a controlled press like they did in the early 90s, even when you've got the government actively suppressing people and in the case of that police officer, perhaps killing him.
Terrence Hickey, yes, he was murdered for what he saw.
The truth eventually gets out. What's changed is that because now we've got an active, visible alternative media, it's changing much more quickly. Okay, yeah. And you've got situations. Look at Benghazi, for example. Okay, that took a few months ago. It was obvious even to the mainstream press was calling BS on the fact that this was the Muslim street inflamed by some movie.
In one location across the Middle East, only one place were they mad and they killed the ambassador.
Exactly. That was just beyond belief for anybody. And yet Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice stuck with that story. It's like, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. And they did that for several days.
It was the only thing they had. The only thing they had.
Exactly. So When people say, when people look at our research, and we have to document stuff more carefully than the mainstream media does because they rely on your credulous faith.
Well, that's the thing, Dave, and that's the thing about, there was a caller earlier trying to explain his frustration about trying to wake people up. And the position we are in trying to fight the official narrative is that every single one of our facts must be true to the T, ultimately vetted. Because the thing is, when you're trying to wake someone up and you're presenting them with information, if you have one fact that it's not backed up, they will latch onto that and hold on to that regardless of the rest of the bulk of your argument.
That's right.
It's all lost because one thing that you said perhaps did not pan out to a T. And that is just human nature. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, whatever. It's human nature, and if you're going to want to wake people up, you're going to have to deal with that. And the counter to that is to being absolutely sure and vetted in your information. But the thing is, that's not too hard either, because what the stories they put out are simply ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So these types of things are going to come out. And when people call us conspiracists, I mean, pick a conspiracy, Fast and Furious, Benghazi, you know, even going back in time, look at the Iran-Contra thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, yes, government does get involved in conspiracy. And yes, it is selected elements within the government.
That's modus operandi. A conspiracy is two or more people engaging in a criminal enterprise.
Right.
I mean, that's the bulk of criminal activity.
Right. And the government charges people with the crime of conspiracy all the time. But they level that charge at us essentially to say, you're off in loony land. But like you said, we have to carefully document everything. And it was amazing to me that this hit piece that came from National Review against Alex Jones was basically talking about the gospel of Alex Jones and how he's got some credulous audience that just takes everything that he says on faith. When in reality, they didn't back that up with anything. They even, the first paragraph they went into was talking about bullets and ammunition story, which from day one, we linked to the FedBiz op page, which showed the actual purchase order.
And now it turns out, Senator Inhofe is now confirming that's all true. That's not conspiracy theory.
And the National Review made the incredible statement that the ammunition levels were the same as they were the previous year, and it was all for target hunting. And we had deceived these congressmen and senators who were coming in there. So they threw their own Republican senators under the bus.
Yeah, National Review is supposed to be an arch conservative, has been an arch conservative paper for decades, or news magazine. How come they are how come they are fulfilling a propaganda agenda for the government?
Well, because from their beginning, they were affiliated with the CIA, William F. Buckley, and the neocons, and they have basically been cheerleaders for every military engagement everywhere. So just like MSNBC, you know,
and CNN,
if you scratch their roots, you find the CIA and you find the military-industrial complex, you know, rapidly.
Is that so hard to believe, people, that the media is controlled? Just think about it this way. Power organizes, right? Power organizes to implement its own agenda, fulfill its own needs. Why would the power elite not control the media?
Right.
Of course they would. That's 2 and 2 equals 4. They would control the media. The fact that they, well, if you think that they don't control the media, that's anomalous to the laws of history and nature.
Absolutely. Changing the subject off of Benghazi, off of the conspiracy stuff again. We mentioned this briefly, and I want to cover this. This D.C. march that's coming up.
Adam Kokesh, former Marine, is calling for an armed march on July 4th to, I guess, to symbolize our stand on gun rights, marching armed around D.C. It's ballsy.
And a lot of people have called into question, and of course there's a lot of risk, as people pointed out, there's a lot of risk that the government can false flag that. That you can put agent provocateurs.
Provocateur, fire one shot.
A lot of people, exactly.
They now have an excuse to basically do whatever they want if one guy does something
very,
foolish.
very risky.
Yeah.
However, there is a reason for him going in with loaded rifles. And we've got a special report that I did basically looking at and analyzing what the D.C. police chief said and what the Supreme Court has done relative to the D.C. laws 5 years ago. Let's play that special report right now, guys. Okay, they got it coming up in just a second. Washington Police Chief Kathy Lanier had this to say when asked about Adam Kokesh's planned 4th of July march into Washington with loaded rifles.
First of all, I want to clear up, there's a difference between civil disobedience, which I think is this is being portrayed as a civil disobedience, and actually violation of the law. I mean, there's two different things here. So civil disobedience, people come to Washington, D.C. to protest policies and government policy all the time. It's no problem. But when you cross into the District of Columbia with firearms and you're not in compliance with the law, now you're talking about a criminal offense, and there's going to be some action by police.
So Chief Lanier wants to make some kind of a distinction between civil disobedience and violating the law. So here again is her definition of civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience, people come to Washington, D.C. to protest policies and government policy all the time. It's no problem.
Note that Chief Lanier characterizes peaceful assembly in order to petition the government as civil disobedience. But what law does a demonstration break? When someone exercises their right to protest, specifically recognized by the First Amendment, how is that disobedience in any way? Since the D.C. police chief hasn't read the Constitution that she swore to uphold when she took office, let's remind her what it says. The right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Chief Lanier, going to Washington and protesting government policy is not civil disobedience. It's an exercise of a constitutionally guaranteed right. Civil doesn't mean polite. It means government. And as we all know from experience, government is not always civil. Disobedience means to actively and publicly disobey laws that are unjust. It is violating the law. Martin Luther King had this to say about violating a court order against him marching.
That I do feel that there are two types of laws. One is a just law and one is an unjust law. I think we all have moral obligations to obey just laws. On the other hand, I think we have moral obligations to disobey unjust laws because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good.
Civil disobedience always involves violating a law. That's where the disobedience part comes in. So Kathy Lanier's distinction between civil disobedience and violating the law is nonsense. But what is the law that Adam Kokesh and his marchers would be disobeying or violating? The very law that was struck down by the Supreme Court in 2008 in D.C. versus Heller. Now, it's interesting to note that Dick Heller, the plaintiff in the case, was actually a D.C. cop who was suing for his right to carry a gun off duty. Of course, the real precedent for it being an individual right is the Second Amendment itself. Both the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that D.C.'s gun laws violate the Constitution. Washington, D.C.'s Firearms Control Regulation Act of 1975 specifically outlawed handguns and requires all firearms, including rifles and shotguns, to be kept, quote, unloaded and disassembled or bound by a trigger lock. That is why I imagine Adam Kokesh and the D.C. marchers are going to be marching with loaded rifles, to illustrate the fact that Police Chief Lanier and the District of Columbia have thumbed their noses at the Constitution and the Supreme Court decision of 5 years ago. So Police Chief Lanier, there is no difference between civil disobedience and violating the law. But since you maintain there's a distinction, I would ask you, is your refusal to obey a Supreme Court ruling of 5 years ago that was made specifically about your gun laws, and your refusal to obey the Constitution that you swore to uphold, is that civil disobedience, or is that violating the law? For InfoWars, I'm David Knight.
That was excellent work, David. I thought it was very interesting that the D.C. police chief basically said that you're free to do as you're told.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, those were the words out of her mouth. I mean, she had no concept of what civil disobedience means. Disobedience, like you said, means disobeying an unjust law. By definition, breaking the law. She viewed civil disobedience only as lawfully approved activity.
Right, right, exactly. I mean, it's almost as if, if you're going to come here and have a protest, I don't really want you to do that, but I'm going to tolerate it. So that's,
And that makes me such a wonderful person because I'm tolerating you speaking your mind.
Exactly. I mean, no, if you go all the way back to Thoreau, the whole idea is that if you've got an unjust law, in his case, he was protesting slavery and the Mexican-American War. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, if you allow these injustices to go on, you are consenting to those. And so what he's saying is when the government is, and then that was applied to specific laws in the case of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, you have laws that are on the books that are unlawful, unconstitutional, immoral.
Well, I mean, the thing is we have
an obligation to fight that.
And we have 40,000 laws on the books. The average person commits 3 felonies a day. So which laws exactly are you supposed to be enforcing, or which are we supposed to be following?
Exactly.
Because if you really believe that you must follow the law, no matter what it says, you're going to have a long day in front of you.
Well, and one of the things that I found interesting about her is that the liberals like to say, don't take the text as a literal meaning. Right? So the liberals don't want to be literal. Okay, they want a living constitution, which basically says if the Supreme Court says it means this, it now means this, regardless.
There are no
of how
principles.
obvious.
It just evolves to what we want it to be.
Right, right. So you've got a law that we can all read and we can all understand it because it's clear. But if the Supreme Court says that it means exactly the opposite, then that's what we're going to go with, the living Constitution. So,
and it'll be unclear because it'll be written by lawyers and Supreme Court justices. It will not be clear to read.
Exactly. But in this particular case, the Supreme Court, which is her typical liberals' ultimate appeal to authority, the Supreme Court struck down her law 5 years ago, and they're not, they're still enforcing that.
Yeah.
And I tried to contact them. I sent them 2 emails. I left a phone message. I talked to someone independently. I could not get her to talk to me about it. So that's why I did the piece here. I would much rather have interviewed her and talked to her about it, but,
well, I mean,
wanting to defend that.
Of course not. And you can see what she is. She was basically a bureaucrat in a uniform.
Right. And what a uniform. Wasn't that a great uniform?
Yeah, yeah.
All those stars.
Yeah, you look like Ike Eisenhower there, getting ready to land on the beaches of Normandy.
Actually,
I was impressed.
I thought she looked more like somebody out of a Gilbert and Sullivan or Marx Brothers movie.
I was thinking Spaceballs, actually.
That's right.
But that's what you have, is you have a bureaucrat in uniform without a sense of irony, telling us that civil disobedience is following the law. I guess, well, she probably did go to public school is what it is.
And look at the way they control demonstrations, though, too. I mean, you've got controlled free speech zones when they have political conventions and everything. They literally put the demonstrators in cages and give them one microphone and a soapbox. I mean, it's absolutely absurd what they do at political conventions. It's absolutely absurd what they do at G8 conventions and everything. Rob Dew was arrested a couple of years ago, and he wasn't even, they were miles away from the event. And they sent out an army of like 1,500 cops to bully and bludgeon and arrest a crowd of demonstrators, ironically, against police brutality.
Oh.
So, I mean, talking about not having a sense of irony. They don't have a sense of irony or a sense of humor or even a sense of what's legal and illegal.
Exactly. They just have a sense of what authority is telling them what to do.
On the 3D gun issue that I heard you talking about yesterday, it was interesting that broke just as he had already been scheduled in an interview with Alex.
Oh, really?
And he was on the interview with Alex when he got that, and so that kind of broke here. And Jakari interviewed him yesterday because he's here locally at the University of Texas in Austin. And we've got a clip of that. If do you guys have that loaded up, that clip from Jakari's interview? Okay, we'll do that after break, perhaps.
Excellent. You're listening to the Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I am guest hosting today. My name's Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I have David Knight in studio discussing his reporting, some special insight on topics going on. David, what would you like to cover next?
Well, we were talking about Cody Wilson coming in here and talking about the 3D gun issue and that sort of thing, and we had a report from Jakari Jackson. We don't really have enough time to play that because we've got a short segment here, but you can see that on Prison Planet TV. You can also see it probably on Infowars.com, but certainly on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. It's only about 3 minutes, but it's a good interview. But it's important on a number of issues, just like you mentioned. They're asserting this UN arms trade treaty, which hasn't even been ratified by the Senate.
Well, they're asserting it now, but a year ago that was a conspiracy theory.
That's right.
The UN treaty.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And actually,
now they're invoking it.
I believe it was a conspiracy. I believe that Fast and Furious was a part of building up a false flag. I mean, the New York Times has mentioned that Fast and Furious was a false flag. I believe that they were trying to build up a narrative saying this is why we need to have the UN arms trade treaty.
Yeah, they were building up that narrative. I remember several years ago when border violence was making news, and I saw President Obama get on the news and say that the border violence was a result of course, guns being, bought in American gun stores. And I was thinking,
he just repeated that again this last week down in Mexico.
Really?
Yeah, the same charge.
Well, he certainly has no shame.
No.
Because President Obama is responsible for the death of at least 3,000 Mexican citizens. I'm surprised that people in Mexico are not enraged that he is in their country talking to them about gun violence.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're talking about that directly with Fast and Furious. Indirectly, you could say the entire Mexican drug war is American foreign policy. Okay? Because when you look at the gun violence in American cities, for example, the Chicago police chief has said that 80% of the firearms fatalities in Chicago are drug gang related. It's all about, it's just, Same thing we had with Al Capone, driving by and shooting rival gangs with machine guns hanging on
same thing.
Exactly. Prohibition always does that. You know, quite frankly, if they prohibit guns, you're going to see that in spades. Because
we're not talking hypotheticals here. Look at Chicago. They actually have banned firearms. You can't own a firearm in Chicago literally to save your life. In one day, 20 people get shot.
Absolutely.
20 people don't get shot in one day in Afghanistan, okay? But it happens on the streets of Chicago where guns are illegal. So why do you think, how do people think or politicians think that outlawing guns on a mass scale is going to solve any problem besides criminalizing guns and making every gun crime will shoot through the roof because literally guns will be illegal?
Absolutely. Going back to this UN Arms Trade Treaty, I believe that the goal all along for this round, at least, ultimately they're after total prohibition, but their goal this time around is registration.
Yep. Universal background checks, registration.
They need to have that before they can really do a good job of confiscation. And I believe that the UN Arms Trade Treaty, as well as Fast and Furious, all this was targeted toward that. And we can see now, in the case of Cody Wilson, that they're even asserting these same sorts of things to shut down, the 3D gun stuff. But if you look at the timing as well, the UN Arms Trade Treaty was coming up in July for a vote, and the week before, and it was in trouble because all this Fast and Furious stuff was breaking. So it broke, but it went the opposite way that they wanted to. Everybody found out it was a false flag.
Just like ClimateGate.
Exactly.
They tried to pull off a contrived agenda, and it blows up literally in their face.
So that had broken, and it was interesting that exactly a week to the day before they were to have the UN Arms Trade Treaty, they did the Aurora, Colorado shooting happened.
Wow.
And so, I thought that was basically going to push it over the edge. That didn't get them any traction. So what they did was they delayed it to after the American election. And it looked like they were going to set it up to do it as a lame duck session, but they did it afterwards because they had big wins in the Democrats and Obama.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a methodology to the madness, people. You're listening to it now on The Alex Jones Show. I'm guest hosting today, Holland Vandennieuwenhof, and we will be right back. Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show, May 10th, 2013. I'm the guest host today, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We had David Knight on with a special report on the planned armed march in D.C. on July 4th by Adam Kokesh and others. Adam Kokesh obviously is a former Marine like myself, so I am following this very closely. I respect the man very much and his courage in taking an armed march on D.C., not to break the law or to commit violence, but to demonstrate our belief in our ability to carry our firearms wherever we like, to assert our rights whenever we like, and not ask for government permission. Because if you have to ask for permission too many times, eventually you're just going to be banned, and that's what's happening. And David Knight was right. Registration, background checks, those are a preliminary to outright confiscation. And we're not arguing hypotheticals here. That has happened in every nation that has outlawed outright firearms. It has been always preceded by registration or background checks and licensing. Now, you may say, well, that sounds great. Oh, we should license firearms because they're dangerous. Well, they license cars also, and that does not make driving any safer. And no one is talking about banning cars. And also, cars are not in the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. Firearms are, for a reason. For the very reason this government, not just this government, and the United Nations is so intent on stripping us of our right to firearms. Why are they so intent on disarming us? If they're not after our guns, why are they doing it? And why? What is in the future that we're going to take such offense to where they're going to be afraid of an armed populace? If you cannot trust your people with firearms, then the government cannot be trusted. And the fact that they're exerting such effort, years in the making, Fast and Furious, like David Knight said, was specifically planned to culminate within a certain time period, which failed. The story blew up. Once again, the information war winning out over the lie. The story blew out just like ClimateGate. Right before their big conference, it came out the emails that they had faked all of the evidence. It has been further corroborated since then. There's actually been a global cooling period. I really don't want to hear the phrase global warming again for the rest of my life now. It's done. It's gone. is dead, or global climate change. That's a state of being. Anyways, same thing with gun control, with Fast and Furious. That was planned far in advance, utilizing ATF, FBI, monitoring gang members, or encouraging them to purchase firearms in American gun stores. When those gun stores, when the owners exhibited reluctance to sell firearms to known gang members and called the ATF saying, hey man, I don't want to sell to this guy. I got a bad feeling his paperwork is not up to speed. He has a criminal history, and I don't want to sell a gun to this criminal. You know what the ATF told him? You will sell him that gun, or we will come to your store and find any violation. You didn't cross an I, you didn't dot a T. We're going to take you down unless you play ball. So, of course, they played ball. They sold the guns. Those guns were moved down to Mexico over a number of years, thousands of them. Those guns have been recovered from thousands of crime scenes where innocent people, victims of the war on drugs in Mexico, have been slain. And they were slain by weapons provided by the United States government that they moved across the border into a foreign country. And like I said, the people of Mexico need to wake up to what's really going on. Some of them are. They're talking about it. But the fact that they tolerated President Obama to come over there and lecture them about gun violence when President Obama is personally directly responsible for over 3,000 deaths and serves a system that's indirectly responsible for thousands more because of the war on drugs. He needed to be talked to about what his government had been doing in Mexico, not trying to tell Mexico how to stop gun violence in this country. Anyways, you're listening to The Alex Jones Show. I am guest hosting Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We're coming up to the last hour. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the last hour of The Alex Jones Show. I'm guest hosting today, May 10th, 2013. My name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I've been on the show a number of times. I guest hosted for the first time several months ago. I had a wonderful time, and I thank Alex for inviting me back. Apparently he wanted to take the day off. He does have a long, hard schedule, so I'm more than happy to give him some relief and to have the honor to be on one of the most popular radio and news shows in the world, especially in the light of what happened after the Boston bombing, when people are becoming aware. When Google searches for the term false flag attack increase 100-fold, you know that this audience is increasing and people are waking up. Of course, I've been asked on to host because of the special insights I've learned and gained as a researcher, writer, producer for the documentary A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City 1995, which is about the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, the first modern expose of that event. I highly recommend that product, if only, not only because I worked on it, but if only because I've been told more than once, and this is the greatest honor I could have gotten out of that movie, was that that film has been a wake-up tool to so many people by the very fact when they look at Oklahoma City and they realize the weight of evidence that is contrary to the official story, but yet the government and the media is still invested in the official story. People realize the depth of the lie that they will engage in to cement their control. Knowing that to be true, people can apply that to current events and view those events through that lens and perhaps not abide by whatever horrific agenda is always on the table when these deep state events occur. This is the last hour of the Alex Jones Show. We're going to have Jakari Jackson coming on in just a few short minutes giving a special report. We have a number of callers on the line. I want to get to them because they've been patient. It looks like we have Witness in Texas. Hello, Witness, if that's your name. You're on the Alex Jones Show. What would you like to talk about?
Thank you, sir. I'm here to share the facts about the ongoing war by many here to defy my right to speak truth to power. In fact, Alex Jones himself asked me by name to call in about this very subject last time I was on air here. And back then, Austin's mayor had banned me from City Hall for trivial, nonsensical hogwash reasons. And since then, I've been banned from the Travis County Commissioner's Court twice already. And recently...
Well, it certainly sounds like you're trying hard enough. I congratulate you.
Well, thank you, sir. And I've been trying to get through to talk about this ever since. And the most recent one was the presiding Judge Bisco of the Travis County Commissioner Court. He banned me for 4 months, meaning 16 weeks. I'm an involved citizen. I go every week, and this is for 5 years now. I have a better attendance record than even the judge.
Well, you know, if every citizen out there is a thing, there was a lesson from the Gulag Archipelago where a prisoner
decided to fight back against the system by basically filling out every single piece of paperwork there was. It was all legal. He was simply playing the system by its own rules. And it basically brought that whole camp to a halt, because every prisoner around him was writing letters to certain bureaucrats, certain officials that had to be answered, had to go through a process. The whole system in that region ground to a halt by weight of paperwork. Now, if we as citizens actually just get on the ground and get involved in every aspect of civil, meaning government life, that would bring the whole thing to a grind right now, which is why probably they find your obstinance so unnerving.
Hallelujah. That's exactly true, and friends are starting to come. I was told by a couple of friends that they would actually come to the Travis County Commissioner's Court and speak on my behalf. That didn't happen. So, but scheduling conflicts came up. But it's still they're going to help me. There are more people who are helping me on this. And again, my big crime was just I was there to speak on an item on the agenda.
Exactly.
And I was sitting up there on stage.
All they want is rubber stamps. They just want rubber stamps. They don't want qualified debate. They don't want the citizens asking questions. They want a rubber stamp on what agenda they wish to implement. And if a citizen stands up, even in the halls of city council, and begins to exercise his civic duty in this day and age, that citizen can become a problem very quickly.
That's exactly right. It was $25 million of taxpayer money that they were planning on just giving away on yet another boondoggle here, and it was my turn to speak. I was sitting up there for a half hour taking notes on all these government officials who were making excuses, and it was my turn to speak, and the judge said, "Okay, Mr. Reefer, see, do you have anything relevant to say?" I mean, I was sitting there for a half hour, and obviously I had 3 pages of notes. But when I questioned his questioning me, he defied decorum by not letting me speak. It was my time to speak. He interrupted me with a illogical question, and I threw it back at him. Well, by golly, Judge, isn't that a little bit, idiotic? And I didn't call him an idiot. I just said,
that's not wise to insult a judge in his own courtroom. Is there an upcoming event you're going to be attending, speaking at? Do you need to raise support for?
Yes, sir. I go every Tuesday, and that is the every weekly meeting of the Travis County Commissioner's Court, and they start at 9. And we all need more people to show up.
There you go.
I'll speak on my behalf, or just defy the judge from. I mean, he doesn't have that role to defy my constitutional rights because he didn't like the question I was going to ask.
Well, you know what? If you give up and go home, he will win. So keep up your fight. And keep on fighting, because you know what? It's not just your liberty. It's everyone's liberty at stake. I have very good friends of mine who are fighting for the liberty of everyone in court, risking their own freedom. And I commend you all. Thank you for calling in, witness.
Bless you. Thank you, sir.
We'll get to the next caller in a second. It's a very good point, fighting back on the local level. Because the political game on the national level, on the big level, that's fixed. We saw that with the Ron Paul campaign in both presidential elections. Where the will of the people was and how the establishment responded by literally stealing elections, stealing conventions, locking doors on people, behaving in childish manners to preserve their stranglehold on the way we educate our environment, our so-called democracy. So knowing that the national game is fixed, how do we fight back? On the local level everywhere, because they can control the national level. What they cannot control is mass insurrection in every city council and every county commissioners meeting. They cannot control that, which is why they don't tell you the power you can exercise in those chambers. You really want to mess up the system, go local. Anyways, let's go to our next caller, Anne Marie of Illinois. Hello, Anne Marie. Welcome to Alex Jones Show. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I was hoping that Alex Jones was on today so I can tell him thank you.
I'll pass it along.
I'm sorry?
I'll pass it along. He needed to take a day off. You understand?
Yeah, I do. He's got so much on his mind. But anyway, I do live in Illinois, and I'm very, very aware of what's going on here. And I've always questioned certain things, but certain people always says, like you say on the radio, conspiracy theory. But I've always been that person, like in the Matrix, where you're half asleep and half awake.
You know, I just came back from Illinois, Anne Marie, on a project, and I've never been to that state. I am returning, not by choice, but for the project. And I was amazed at the police state presence outside Chicago. That is Obama land. I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma. I've lived in Texas and lived in a couple different places around the world, but I've never seen on a highway in America, or no, a street in America, within a quarter mile, 3 different police officers just standing there by the side of the road, pointing a radar gun at traffic. Nothing else to do. Outside the murder capital of the world, where 20 people get shot in a day, the police are literally just lasing every car that goes by. Every intersection, as far as I could tell, had a red light camera. Now, I don't know if that's the new standard in America. I live in in Oklahoma, like I said, and we're kind of behind the times, for better or worse. But I was shocked. Every intersection had a red light camera, and the people were not safer. They certainly were not happier. They, in fact, it's the most stratified society I've ever seen. The people were at war with one another, and I couldn't wait to leave. Yeah,
that's how they want it, and that's how it is, because it's normal. We consider it normal.
Mm-hmm.
We never really ride down Lakeshore Drive and see that gun and think it wasn't normal. So that's the brainwashing.
Well, I hope it never becomes normal where I live, but if things keep on going, I'm sure they will.
Well, I am a citizen that's awake, and like you state, they don't like us awake, they like us asleep, and I hate the fact of, governing people with control. I am not from this country. I wasn't born here, but I am a citizen of this country, and anything Alex Jones speak about, I do my research on, because I don't take people at face value. I have to know what they're about and do your research. People, wake up. Simple.
Well, I thank you for calling in, Anne-Marie. Sorry about that. I had a bug in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Just I hope that your listeners are listening, and I hope that more people like me start to wake up and realize that we are in control and we need to voice our opinion. And I hope that, especially from my community here in Illinois, realize that this is all a game.
Well, people are waking up, Anne-Marie, and even in Illinois, which is the heart of the beast in many ways, your efforts are even needed more directly. You are behind enemy lines, and your efforts, like a commando behind enemy lines, are felt even more effectively. And I thank you for calling in, and I thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Let's go to the next caller, Peter from Boston. This is regarding the Boston bombings. Let's get some eyes on the scene in Boston with Peter. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show.
Thank you very much, Holland. And I've seen bits of your documentary, and it enlightened me in a way. It was part of my waking up process, so thank you for that. I want to talk about the congressional hearings yesterday.
Okay. Hey, Peter, you know what? I want to talk to you about this, but we're coming up on break, and we'll get to you right on the other side. Is that all right?
Yes, excellent. It's regarding the bombings.
Excellent. We want to listen to what you have to say about that. You are from Boston. You're listening to the Alex Jones Show. I am guest hosting. My name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof, and we will be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. In a few minutes, we're going to have Jakari Jackson on with a special report. That'll be interesting, I'm sure. As of now, we're taking your calls. We have Peter from Boston, who's going to offer his insight on the Boston bombing. So, Peter from Boston, welcome to the Alex Jones Show again. Thank you for holding over the break. What would you like to discuss?
Well, first I want to start by saying I agree with Alex's scenario of the suspects being CIA operatives.
It's not a scenario, that's an analysis. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
I do agree with Alex on that, but I want to talk about the hearings yesterday because I think this is where we'll see the agenda starting to play itself out. I want to make 5 quick points. This is what I took from watching the hearings. There seem to be 5 agendas. The first one is that they want to eliminate the police jurisdictions that separate radio communications between different small town departments and other town departments.
Well, do you think they want to do that to restrict people listening in on those communications, or?
They want to open up, they want to be able to override the small town police radio transmission so that they could, for instance, call for a stand down. The Watertown police were the first to arrive at the boat, and I think that they're responsible for saving that kid's life, because if they hadn't been there, I don't know if he'd be alive today.
Like I said...
second thing they want to do is they want to criminalize not reporting if your neighbor, your friend, your spouse, or your parents don't express anti-government sentiments.
Well, they're already talking about it in Florida, where they're saying that If your neighbor hates the government, I want to know that man's name.
Exactly, or you're liable for a crime. Yeah. The third point is that they want to monitor the Internet, people's use of the Internet to visit anti-government websites.
Yeah, they're talking about the self-radicalization, once again blaming an inanimate object, the Internet, on as being responsible for this terrorist act.
They want to be able to censor the Internet, and they want to be able to promote the demonization of Islam. And I think more than anything, they want to promote the demonization of Islam. And I think that... Well,
it fulfills the purpose. It justifies the continued war on terror. It justifies the continued crackdown on our liberties. They're going to milk the Muslim excuse as far as they can, as long as it is effective.
And I cannot imagine the fear that good, honest Muslim Americans are feeling as a result of all of this bashing of themselves and their religion. But, you know, I also believe that everything that they're accusing the Islamists of, they themselves are guilty of. And by they, I mean these infiltrators into every vector of influence in the United States government, and including the media and publications for the last 100 years. And I think you know which group I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, they're trying to engineer a clash of civilizations. They've talked about this by demonizing the Muslim world, and it's working.
Exactly. Again, accusing them of all the things that actually they themselves are guilty of, and these infiltrators. And they're in every level, in every place, in every organization, in every charity, and they have essentially taken over every vector of influence that we are exposed to as Americans at home. I just want to quote James Forrestal, who was mysteriously found dead,
hanging from a hospital sheet from his hospital room. Yes.
Yeah, he was the first Secretary of Defense, and he said, no group in this country should be permitted to influence our policy to the point it could endanger our national security. And I believe there is a group that has infiltrated, again, every vector of influence, and I think that group needs to be identified, and not to identify it is to do nothing but slash at the branches and not the root of the problem. That's my opinion. That's where I'm coming from.
Peter, I appreciate your eyes on the ground in Boston, your insight, the fact that you're awake, and for calling in. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yes, Peter actually had a good point. The Watertown Police Department, which showed up and arrested the second Chechen brother in that boat, his point was they were probably not supposed to be the responding department, and they probably saved that young man's life because they were not the hit team. I revealed earlier on the show for the first time that the arresting officer in that case was actually a brother of mine in the Marine Corps. I was his squad leader, and he has not been interviewed by Anderson Cooper as a member of the Watertown SWAT team. In fact, he was in the Caribbean at that time, so they sent him away, and he's not been allowed to talk to me or anyone else. Well, he's gotten some word out. I've been able to confirm some information, but then the Attorney General for Massachusetts issued a verbal gag order, and he's no longer allowed to talk about what he saw. But the point about the radio communications was, yes, the Watertown SWAT team showed up. Perhaps they weren't supposed to show up, because I have no doubt that that kid in the boat was not supposed to live to tell his tale. Anyways, you're listening to the Alex Jones Show. I am your guest host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. We'll be right back with Jakari Jackson. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. Thank you for joining us. We have a number of callers on the line. Before we go back to them, we have Jakari Jackson in studio.
How you doing, Holland?
Outstanding. A fellow Okie.
Yes.
It's finally great to meet you in person.
Yeah, I think I was here when I interviewed back in July or August. You guys were here, but I didn't get a chance to talk to you because you were live on air, and then I had to run out to the airport. But, you know, it's nice to meet you in person. I had a chance to interview you. You were one of the first interviews I had when I got down here to Austin, so it's nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, definitely. It's an honor to meet everyone here at the Info operation. A lot of talent behind the scenes. I'd like to thank the staff behind the scenes for their support and everything else. You were going to bring up a number of topics. Apparently there is a video that's going viral.
Yes, this is one of the top videos on YouTube right now. This was actually sent to me last night. Had a chance to review it. It's a very interesting piece. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have already had a chance to see it if you're savvy on YouTube. It's the clip of a student. He's in class, and he basically tells his teacher that she doesn't know how to teach. It's a very interesting clip. And then I want to talk a little bit about this and maybe some homeschooling things as well. But let's go ahead with that clip.
If you would just Get up and teach them instead of handing them a freaking packet, yo. There's kids in here who don't learn like that. Bye. They need to learn face to face. You're just getting mad because I'm pointing out the obvious, and you're
wasting my time.
No, I'm not wasting your time. I'm telling you what you need to do.
Get out.
You want kids to come into your class? You want them to get excited for this? You got to come in here. You got to make them excited. You want a kid to change and start doing better? You got to touch his freaking heart. Can't expect a kid to change if all you do is just tell him. You gotta take this job serious. This is the future of this nation. And when you come in here, like you did last time, and make a statement about, oh, this is my paycheck, indeed it is. But this is my country's future and my education.
I respect that. Can you go outside, please?
But there's a limit. When I'm not but simply making an observation.
Okay, okay.
And now I will leave. You're welcome.
Good, bye.
And if you would like, I'll teach you a little more so you can actually learn how to teach a freaking class. Because since I got here, I've done nothing but read packets. So don't try and take credibility for teaching me jack.
Just go, bye.
Now, Holland, that was a very interesting clip, I thought so, because, you know, I had a chance, I was very fortunate, I got to go to one of the better schools within my city, so I can't say I can actually relate to his particular situation, but we see a lot of that with it, no child left behind and so on. And the guy says in the clip, all you do is you hand us packets, you don't teach us anything, you don't engage us in any way, you just give us, you know, the school gives you these packets and you give them to us.
Yeah, that kid didn't mention no child left behind, but that's exactly what that is. I've talked to teachers who are working now teaching kids, and they say, we're not allowed to teach.
Right.
All we do is just hand information so they can pass the test.
And it's basically pass the test. It's all they do. They're trying to change them, to train them to pass the test, not to think critically, to get any type of real skills that will help them in actual life. It's just read this packet and take the test. That's pretty much all they're trained to do.
Well, that's, I mean, the purpose of public education is not to create an enlightened, inquisitive, active citizenry who's going to be vigorous in defense of their rights. It is to create corporate cogs and political minions who will do what they're told. That is the purpose of public education. That was its founding in Prussia, in Germany. They openly talked about, we're going to have a stratified education system, one class for the peasants, one class for the managers, one class for the elite. We see that played out to this day. And if people happen to become educated in the public educated system, that's just an unintended consequence.
Yes, and actually, since you bring up those foreign areas, let's take a look at this article right here if we can get a DocCam. Americans warn homeschoolers stripped of rights. Now, this was from earlier in this month, but it's still very relevant. Recently, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, once again, has said that homeschooling is not a parent's right. It is a statement that some are saying should frighten American parents. Nations like Germany and Sweden show that the governments take away homeschooling rights. It's a slippery slope with no parental rights.
Eric Holder, we got to love that guy. He's providing us with
he's pretty busy.
A lot of good material he gives us.
I mean, from Fast and Furious to anything else, and now he's talking.
Now he's taking a stand on homeschooling.
Yes.
So yeah, I really respect his stand on homeschooling. Well, Eric Holder obviously is a tool of the establishment through and through. That's how he got his start in the Department of Justice, covering up the Oklahoma City bombing back in 1996. He wasn't involved from the beginning, but he was brought in afterwards to manage the cover-up. And now he's brought back as Attorney General, just in time to manage Fast and Furious. Now he's issuing statements on this about homeschooling.
Yeah, and you want to take your advice from this guy. And people always bring up the question, like, why do you blame Obama or Eric Holder or whoever? I mean, when you look at a guy like Eric Holder who is purposely withholding documents that could get to a deeper level of Fast and Furious, if nothing else, he's guilty of that. You know, even if maybe he was, you know,
he's been censured by Congress.
Yeah,
and he's still in office.
Wile E. Coyote pushing down the plunger on the dynamite, but the guy is withholding critical information.
He's the cover-up artist. He's not the executioner. He is the one put in place to cover up everything and to make sure that any inquiries will be frustrated by his position as Attorney General.
Exactly, and it's just more. We see the war on homeschoolers, war on people who just want to educate the children themselves. Like, because I heard some of the guys talking, they have very young children now, and I was asking one of the guys, well, when your child gets old enough to go to school, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to send them out to school and just detox them when they get back home. And it seems like a very laborious process. You know, you send your kid out there for, 8 hours a day or so, and then they come home like, okay, almost everything they told you was a lie. You know, that's pretty much the situation.
Well, 2 plus 2 does equal 4, but everything else, there's an agenda behind
it. Even that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is 2 plus 2 equals 4 may not be the same always, according to 1984.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the situation people are dealing with, and I know we have some calls, and we can get to those in just 1 second. I definitely want to have people's opinions on this, on the homeschooling front, on the clip we just showed with the student, and just get everybody's opinions on these matters.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the callers. I like to relate one story first. I have a very good friend of mine who's an Oklahoma City school teacher. He spent a couple of years in the business, and he finally came to me and he said, you know what? I think I found out what my job was. I said, what? I think my job is to keep poor people dumb. Because he's not allowed to teach these inner city kids. Not allowed at all. I think you're onto it. That's pretty much what it is, to keep the status quo as it is and to effectuate control of the whole society. That is the purpose of public education, and he is learning the hard way.
Yeah, and a lot of teachers get blamed, and I mean, just like the teacher we saw, from what I understand, that was the actual teacher, not some substitute teacher, was the...
You wouldn't be able to tell.
I was told.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it seemed like a substitute teacher. You know, they come in, you know, okay, I'm teaching math today, I'm teaching science.
Here's a packet,
whatever.
I'm going to be on my laptop.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. But a lot of the teachers take a lot of heat for this, but a lot of people don't know that the teachers can't really actively engage. I mean, she didn't seem too engaged herself, but let's say if it was a teacher who was interested in the materials and in the students' well-being, you know, they can't actively engage them on that level to really boost up the children.
No, you're going to be rapidly frustrated if you're an earnest teacher like my friend. He joined out of good instincts to teach his community, to raise the next generation, and he's totally frustrated in his efforts, and he's come to the conclusion that his job is to stratify society, and he's waking up. Anyways, we have a number of callers. I don't want to leave them out. We'll take, Jakari and I, we're going to take your calls and talk about what you want to talk about. We have Jamie from Tennessee going to discuss 3D guns. Welcome, Jamie, to the Alex Jones Show. You'd like to talk about 3D guns?
Yeah, that's correct. I also want to comment real quick on Jakari's statement about No Child Left Behind. I'm 23 years old, and I have a 5-year-old son. I'm about $60,000 in debt because I've kept him in school since he was 3 months old. In the local college here, they have a child division there. Back to the No Child Left Behind part. I'm sorry, I was jumping out of the way there. When I was raped and molested for more than 10 years of my life, and moved throughout foster home to residential facility to group home. During this No Child Left Behind period, when the law was put into place, I was actually in school. What this did for someone like me, or anyone else who's been abused throughout their past, they pretty much put you in what's called a behavior modification class. If you've had any sort of traumatizing events, they put you in what's called a behavior modification.
It's actually called behavior modification?
Behavior modification.
Wow, at least they're not being shy about it.
Mm-hmm.
They seclude you completely from the school. And this is just an example. This is my example. This is actually what happened to me. While I was in this foster care agency, I went to another county and left the jurisdiction of the county which the behavior modification was housed in. When I went to this other county for foster care, they put me in a normal school and a normal facility.
Did they keep you drugged up on big pharma psychotropic drugs? Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Psychotropic drugs, Seroquel, Trazodone, lithium, Adderall.
What you'll find often is that these CPS agencies are actually farming out these children, selling them as lab monkeys, basically, to big pharma, testing drugs on them, testing the long-term results of heavy exposure to big pharma. So that is what they're doing, literally selling these children.
Absolutely. And during my 4 years in this, I'm sorry, let me go back. While I was in the school with normal kids, I did absolutely fine. I had no altercations whatsoever. I actually excelled in school. When I went back to the jurisdiction and completed my foster care program, in the amount of time, the minimum amount of time that you could complete it in, I went back and showed them the progress that I had made, and they said, no, that's too bad. You didn't do it in our county under our eyes. It doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. So I spent 3 more years in this behavior modification class. It has 8th grade books. Whether you're 12th grade or 8th grade, you study the same books every single year.
Wow.
So really the child is completely left behind. They act like you're not left behind. And even the kids who do act out in school. Now me, for instance, you give a 14-year-old kid 300 milligrams of Seroquel in the morning, and then 300 milligrams at lunch. By the time I even get on the bus, I'm nodding out so hard that it's like a morphine drip. I can't stay awake. So I get to school, lay down my head, and then I'm disobeying direct orders. and they call the police on you.
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They feed you full of drugs. This leads to unproductive behavior, which you're then penalized for, which leads to more drugs. This is the whole system.
Exactly.
It's self-feeding.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm only a few years older than the caller, but I saw many kids on drugs when I was in school. I'm not necessarily saying they got them, because of the school, but, behavior problems at home or whatever the case may be, and they come in, they're doped up, and like I said, they have trouble paying attention, they're acting out in class. Even the kids who may have not had such a adverse reaction to the medication, they kind of have this placebo effect. They think if I take this drug, or if I don't take this drug, I'm just going to act wild. So they just come in and just act wild.
I know I was talking to some young people, some friends of mine, and they were relating the fact that street drugs are really no longer even used in high schools. I guess
not really.
It's all pharma. It's all pharma.
I'm only a few years older than the caller, but maybe some marijuana. But other than that, most of it was.
It's all it's all big pharma drugs they steal from their parents or they sell. I was shocked, surprised. I mean, and that's what they want. They want everyone hooked on pharma from a young age because these are behavior modification drugs. Well, if they're behavior modification drugs, they can modify your behavior to a desired end.
Exactly. Now, you did have a question about the...
I'd like to say real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Jakari, I just want to let you know that about 3 months ago I was listening to InfoWars, and I'm not too sure where I had heard about it yet. Was Alex ever on a radio show called Coast to Coast AM?
Yes.
He's been on there several times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I started to wake up in 2011 and pretty much fell back asleep with Fitzer and Purdue University cramming their medication down my throat. I woke up about 3 months ago to you, Jakari, and I just want to say I appreciate everything you guys are doing and all the info warriors out there that are getting the info out and just doing their part to wake this up.
I definitely appreciate that, sir.
Thank you so much, Jakari. And I just have one question, and I'll take my answer off the air to get the next caller in line. What do you all think? I saw the statement on InfoWars that Obama gave the stand-down order in Benghazi. Do you all think that this is, he's already, in my opinion, a tyrant traitor. And has been, and I don't believe he was ever eligible to be the president of the United States. Do you all think that this will change the public's view if this goes viral and big media does start picking it up? Actually, in my opinion, this is big media. InfoWars is big media. Do you all think that this will change the public's opinion? And I'll take my answer off there. Thank you.
Well, to address your first thing, talking about did Obama get the stand-down order, we actually have a document. Maybe we can get a doc cam, guys. This is on InfoWars right now by Paul Joseph Watson. Congresswoman, Obama gave Benghazi stand-down order. Now, this is referencing you can take a look at that, Holland. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet. This was referencing a congresswoman who was on a radio show, and she was asked, you've dealt in foreign relations and so forth. Who could give an order to have a stand-down like this? And she said, the only person I know of is the president.
Well, actually, her definitive statement was, she was asked, because you have been an ambassador, you have been overseas with similar responsibilities and similar missions. Who gives such an order to stand down? Where does that come from? The answer from the former ambassador, the president of the United States.
Yes.
So that's pretty black and white, and the White House is not denying this. They're just not answering the question. So that leads us to believe that Obama was directly involved in issuing that stand-down order, which led to the deaths of 4 Americans.
Yeah, and I don't think this is just a incompetence deal. I mean, people knew about it. They let it happen. That some people may have been actively engaged in things such as stand-downs. As far as the caller's other point, will this help wake up the American people? Maybe. The thing I've found...
The people are going to wake up themselves.
Yes. The thing I've found to be most effective, because we get a lot of calls, how do I wake up my cousin or my aunt or my dad or whoever, is I tell people, tell your friend or whoever to set their own line. When it hits this bad, I'll come back and tell you, and don't make an excuse for it. This is what you said. When it gets this bad, you'll wake up, you'll write your congressman, you'll call out Obama or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, just write down something ludicrous that you don't think will ever happen and give it about 3 months and it will. Yeah. And then come to me and let's talk.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for calling in. We'll go to our next caller, Eric from Tennessee. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show, Eric. It looks like you want to discuss the NATO arms agreement. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Great to talk to both of you. Great to meet you for the first time. You're doing a great job hosting today. I just thought I'd
thank you very much.
throw that in there. The NATO small arms agreement, the printing of the gun That just blows my mind. I mean, the fact that they can throw that in there.
Well, they view it as a threat, obviously, because now that the ability to disseminate that information to print a gun anywhere you like is out there, now they're shutting it down because it is a direct assault on the long-term plan to affect the market for guns.
Exactly. And even more than that, when we had Cody Wilson, I'll let you finish, Collie, but I just want to throw this point out there. We had Cody Wilson on the show last night, and he said this isn't just an attack on guns, this is an attack on information. Because this information goes onto the internet and they're trying to censor this internet site. So it's beyond guns. It's just something that they think they can target safely, or, you know, safely to an extent, because you'll have the soccer moms and other people. I don't want people with printable guns. So that's how they start. And then it's going to be the next thing, then the next thing. Then they don't want you making whatever in your house. But go ahead and make your point, Colin.
Well, the thing about what I was thinking, it's the first thing I thought about yesterday when I was listening to Alex, and he called in and said that they had shut him down. The first thing that popped into my head was, well, if he was to limit his site where it could not be accessed worldwide, if it can only be accessed inside the United States, then at that point it would no longer be an export.
Well, I'm sure Cody's a pretty smart guy, actually he is, and I'm pretty sure he's going to outsmart the government bureaucrats on this one also.
I'm pretty sure he has something up his sleeve. Yeah. I'm not exactly up on the legal aspects of it.
Fully confident. Well, thank you, Eric, for calling in. Welcome to the last segment of the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host today, May 10th. My name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I'd like to remind my audience who I am. I served in the Marine Corps as a rifle squad leader. I continue to serve my country in exposing the truth. I was a writer and producer for a documentary called A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, which is available at the InfoWars store. I highly recommend you pick that up. I've been told more than once that it has been proven a valuable wake-up tool to the so-called uninitiated to this evidence, or those who have been resistant to this information. And like I said,
very well done. I want to tell you this story. I know we have callers, and I'll try to be brief. I was taking a criminal justice class back in Oklahoma right before I got this job at InfoWars, and I was in the class, about 40 people. Some of these people going for, advanced degrees and so on. And I engaged the professor, and I asked him about the Oklahoma City bombing. And we started talking about not just Timothy McVeigh, but the other people out at LOM City. And in a class of about 40 people, this is a night class, a lot of older people, professionals. I'm probably one of the youngest people in the class. I'm probably like 25, 24 at the time. Well, I guess 25. And he says, concerning LOM City, he said, I think you and I are the only people in this room who know what you're talking about. In a room full of criminal justice majors. Because even people in Oklahoma don't know about this information I'm finding out.
Yeah, LOM City, of course, was a neo-Nazi compound in eastern Oklahoma, which, by the way, was a federal honey trap. The founder and leader was making $400 a month. We have the paperwork, $400 a month, as an informant while he's running one of the largest neo-Nazi communities in the country. What does that tell you? That so-called movement is largely funded by the federal government, who invents these bogeymen to justify their existence. But regarding Oklahoma City, Jakari, that's a good point. The fact that that operation has existed in eastern Oklahoma without any kind of scrutiny, without people knowing about it, tells you that if it was a real threat to the establishment, it wouldn't be there. It serves a purpose.
Exactly.
And to find out more about that, please check out A Noble Lie. It's available in the info store, and that supports our efforts and the efforts here of all the crew and staff at the operation supporting the Alex Jones Show. I'm really impressed with their professionalism, with their capabilities, with the vast expanse of their presence here, and it's all possible by your support and you spreading the word. So let's get to our callers before we leave. We have Adrian from California. Adrian, welcome to the Alex Jones Show. What would you like to talk about?
Hi, this is Adrian Lamelli. I'm a first-time caller.
Excellent.
And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone pushing the cause and everyone's effort for bringing down the criminal organization that we call the United States government. And along with all the great points today that everybody's taken in, I want this point kind of out there for people to just think about and indulge in. Just an example of mainstream media madness, I guess. They are a lot of things I've seen with the attacks on Alex Jones and InfoWars on the Rachel Maddow show.
Oh yeah, they're attacking him in the mainstream, and that's good because they can't ignore this operation.
Like every day we're flipping through the mainstream channels, and they're talking about Drudge, or they're talking about Alex, or even Dan Badandi sometimes. You know, but at least people are getting our attention. But please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I totally. I've noticed a big change in people as soon as Alex was on Piers Morgan and all that. It just, like people say, at first they deny you even existing, and then they call you crazy, and they're just really nervous, and they are shutting down in a lot of ways of their thinking, I guess.
We're seeing it played out. It's history rhymes as well as repeats. Anything else, Adrian?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I've seen the attempts of the mainstream media to push the libertarian movement strictly on like the conservative side, which I agree is an arm of that, but I kind of feel like they're pushing InfoWars and Alex Jones to the right wing.
Oh, they're trying to pigeonhole.
About out of time. InfoWars Nightly News tonight, 7 p.m.